Hi all, you're listening to the RAD Experience on Brimbank Live with Roshani and AD. Today on the show, we are speaking about colorism and are now joined by the ever-talented Swarnaa Rajalingam. Welcome to the show, Swarnaa. How are you?
Thank you for having me. I'm good.
That's good. You have done some incredible work around colorism, and it's especially got some attention from some big Hollywood stars, which we'll get into. But first of all, let's kind of go back to the start. And can you tell us a little bit about your experiences of colorism growing up?
Yeah, colorism played a huge role in my life. In fact, I didn't really have a term when I was obviously experiencing it in my childhood. So in my family, I'm probably someone that's more on the darker side of the family. So I'd always felt left out. I think even just in schools, whenever I was like part of productions, musicals, I'd always felt like I was pushed to the side. I was never given like a role in the spotlight, and it always felt like I was being discriminated, but I could never find the right term or the right concept behind why that was the case. I didn't actually realize it had anything to do with my skin color growing up. And then I think as I started to get a little bit older and started to like listen to the conversations that were happening and being told that, oh, you know, like you've gotten a little bit darker, what's going on? Maybe you shouldn't spend so much time out in the sun. I was a very athletic girl growing up as well. And that's kind of when I started to realize like, oh, this, like a lot of the discrimination that's happening is coming down to actually my complexion. And it was a really, really hard concept to maneuver, especially because I didn't really have like family members within my direct family circle who could really understand what I was going through. Because I looked like the odd one out, especially with my siblings, including my parents. And it was just a really, really hard thing to maneuver. And I didn't really know how to have the dialogue with other girls my age as well, especially as teenagers. It just wasn't a widely spoken topic. And just like, you know, being told like, hey, you know, you should try this Fair and Lovely cream, or like you should try this face mask, or, you know, just stay away from the sun, or like, don't wear that outfit, it's going to make you look darker. And it just like consumed my mind, like to the point that I think I was like 12 years old and I was already like online looking at ways to like lighten my skin and bleach my skin. And I'd actually like found a book where this lady had written about why different ethnic groups were different complexions, and she'd done this whole PhD study on how it was like the amount of sulfur in our food, and she'd like unlocked the mystery to skin lightening. And obviously I didn't have like a credit card at that age, but I really wanted the book. Like I was so obsessed with my complexion because I thought, you know what, like if I can get lighter, then I'm going to be able to get more opportunities, I'm going to be more happier, I'm going to be treated better, I'm going to look so much more beautiful, I'm going to feel validated. And so I'd gotten like an older friend of mine to order the book for me. And like, I don't know if you guys have watched Charmed, but like I treated that book like it was my like magic potion book. Like I didn't want anyone to know about it. I kept it in a safe place, and like I'd flick through it and I'd get so excited, like, oh my God, like I figured it out. Like I just know I'm going to naturally change my skin complexion. And now that I think back on it, like I'm 27 years old and I'm like, I can't believe a young 12-year-old child was so obsessed with the complexion of her skin, all thanks to like society and like all the comments that I'd gotten. Like even when I was born, I'd heard comments from my relatives where they were like, apparently as a baby, like they saw the color of my ears, and because it was pink, they had determined, oh, yep, this one's going to be dark. And like the conversations were taking place from the hospital room, if you know what I mean. And it's just, it's such a like, it's so sad. And I think when I joined social media, and then I started to hear a little bit more about the term shadeism and colorism, and there was this whole campaign called Unfair and Lovely, and just connecting with other women from like other communities as well, and to see that, oh, like, wow, this is such a huge issue and it's happening around the world, and reading other people's stories and realizing, oh, this is very universal. It doesn't matter what part of the world we're from. A lot of us are going through this within our own communities. And that's kind of when I like started to like unlearn that, hey, you know what, like my beauty and my worth has nothing to do with my complexion, and this seems to be an actual issue within our community. And I started to like speak up a bit more about it and connect with other girls that had gone through similar experiences.
Thank you so much. Everything you said there really resonated with, you know, me as an African girl growing up, because we go through the exact same things and it's a really confusing time. So I really, really felt that. Did colorism, you know, like the jabs and the words here and then, you know, the making you feel a bit like the odd one out, did it ever turn into outright discrimination? Did you ever experience outright discrimination because of your skin tone?
Yeah, absolutely. I've had people outright tell me, especially in school, like, you know, when you're young, kids have no filter, right? Yeah. They just say it like it is.
Yeah.
And so, like, especially out in the playground, in primary school especially, I'd been given comments around like, oh, you're the ugly duckling, you're the black swan, and given my name is Swarnaa as well, you're the black swan. And it was just like outright discrimination.
Crazy.
And in my language, there's a term called karapi. So karapi means black girl, but it's not in an endearing way. It's a very condescending, like I guess the connotations behind the word, like the way it's said, it's very condescending. So like I would have like random friends or like relatives, like for them it's like a joke, you know, with a smug on their face of like, oh, karapi, and just like comments like, and I don't know, like you might be able to relate to this, like the lights go off and they go, oh, where's Swarnaa? Can't see her.
Show us your teeth.
Yeah.
Open your eyes wide.
Yep. Light up the place with your teeth, and just like, oh, guys, you better use the flash on the camera or Swarnaa's not going to be seen. And just like comments like that, for me, I felt like that was outright discrimination, because they're blatantly talking about my skin complexion and putting me down. And yeah, I think in primary school it was probably the worst, because kids just have no filter whatsoever. They just come at you, and you just don't have the tools or resources to deal with it. Because at the time I didn't even know what colorism was. So for me, I was just like,
you start thinking, is it me? Like, what can I do? Do I start acting differently so people can like me? Like, what is it? Like you said, stay out of the sun more. Like, what can I do to change the feelings of other people towards me? Which is so wrong, especially as a child.
Yeah, exactly. And I was such an athletic child. I loved being outdoors. And I think as Australians, it's such a huge part of our lifestyle. And, you know, being in primary school and high school, like sports is such a huge, huge thing. And so I loved being outdoors. And so when the comments started to get to me, like I stopped going outside as much, like I stopped being athletic, I stopped wanting to play outside. I'd be like focused on where's the shelter, where are the trees, it's a hot summer country, and I don't want to go to the beach because I just don't want to get darker. I don't want to get the comments, like I don't want to go to events. And the first thing people say is not, hey, how are you? Oh my gosh, what happened to you? You got darker, like as if I'd like committed a crime or something. And so, it was just such a hard thing to maneuver at the time.
Yeah, absolutely. And you talk about like those discriminatory things that, you know, are projected towards you, but also sometimes, and I know like, this is something that a lot of young women of colour have, especially when, you know, people are trying to compliment you, but it's almost like a backhanded compliment. Like I've gotten things like, you're really pretty for a dark-skinned girl, or you've got really nice features, you know, to like, but you have dark skin. And it's kind of like, you know, and people think that they're complimenting you, but it's actually like perpetuating those ideas. Have you ever kind of gotten that at all?
Oh, that was my like anthem, I think. No matter where I walked into, it was just like, and in Tamil, they've got an exact translation. It's Vadivanapulla Anal Kondum Niram Kurevu. So, you know, you're pretty for a dark-skinned girl. And I received that comment wherever I went. And initially at the start, I actually took it on as a compliment. I was like, oh, okay, like finally, like someone saying I'm beautiful. I mean, yeah, I guess I'm dark, but I'm beautiful for a dark-skinned girl. And then I like, as I grew up, I'm like, wait, like this just doesn't sound right. There's something so off about this. And, you know, why is it that like when it's me, we have to say you're beautiful for a dark-skinned girl, but if it was someone that's like medium tone or lighter skin, it's just you're beautiful. It has nothing to do with your complexion. You're just beautiful. And yeah, and it's really funny because when I was younger, I'd listen to it, I'd try to process it. It never made sense. And, you know, people would say, oh, you have such sharp features, and you have such beautiful features. And it's all about the features. You know, that's where they're placing the focus because they just don't want to make a comment because you're darker. And now I still receive those comments, and it's so funny because I can see my mum like doing this to whoever's giving me that comment, like,
don't start her.
Don't start her. And I would just give, because I'm very fluent when it comes to Tamil, and because I'm so passionate about this, I'm like ready to go for the kill as polite as possible. I'm like, hold up. Let's revisit that. What do you mean I'm pretty for a dark-skinned girl? What does that mean? Let's unpack this. And honestly, like, I actually genuinely enjoy those conversations because, like, it's interesting to just see, like, especially people from the older generation, like, really struggle because they don't even think about it. Like, they don't mean to say it. Like, they've grown up in a community and a generation where this was standard. And so a lot of them have gone through colorism and not realized it. We're so blessed that we have social media and the internet, and we're able to connect and have these conversations and unpack it and unlearn it. And so it's really interesting when you're putting someone on the spot that has never heard anything about this, and they're just like, you know, and like you're able to have that critical conversation. But yeah, it's just so funny when my mom's just like, don't do it, wrong path.
And they often say that's the best way to tackle, you know, discrimination or racism or whatever, is when someone says something off, you pull them up on it and say, what do you mean by that? As soon as you stop someone and make them think about it, then they realize, oh, oopsie, like I didn't even think.
Yeah,
exactly. So it's like a great way to tackle it. At what point in your life did you decide, no, I'm not going to go through this anymore. I'm not going to try to change myself, and I am going to fight back actually against these people who are making me feel worthless?
Yeah, good question. So I have to say it all comes down to social media, because up until social media, I was just connected with a small community, and I just never knew how to have the conversation in person. I didn't know about the term. I didn't know how to process it. For the longest time, I just grew up thinking I'm such an unattractive child, and, you know, like, why do I have this skin tone? Is it my fault? Like, did I just go out in the sun and like play too much and I deserve this? And sometimes you start to believe that it's your skin tone, but it's also something else that you're lacking. And so when I joined social media and like I joined all these communities on Instagram, and I saw these campaigns and I read about other people's stories, and I think the comfort of being in your home and reading and learning at your own pace really, really helps. So I think it was, the Unfair and Lovely campaign. That hashtag led me to meet a lot of other girls who had gone through exactly what I'd gone through. So just reading about it, I started to realize, like, oh, I'm not alone in this, and this is actually not okay. And that actually prompted me to do more research about this, and where does this come from, and why does this exist, and how is it that someone from the other side of the world is going through exactly what I'm going through in Australia. And that's, as I started to read more stories, I think I found more tools and resources to unlearn what was happening. And that's when I realized, you know what, no, I'm not taking this, because I remember being a child and how I felt, and now I'm seeing younger girls. Like I tutored, so I used to see younger girls and have these conversations, and they would straight up tell me, yep, I'm dark, so I'm ugly. And I just saw myself in a lot of these younger girls at events, parties, tutoring, whatever it may be. And I realized, like, this is continuing. Like, this is going to be a huge cycle, and it's going to continue happening. And I honestly did not want other people to go through, like, what I had experienced and how that had impacted my confidence. I had absolutely no self-esteem. I felt like a part of my childhood had been robbed because of colorism. And if I had people around me and I knew that this was a common issue, and I had people to talk to, and I had a way of understanding why this was happening, I probably wouldn't be as affected. And so I think, like I have to really attribute it to social media and being able to connect with people from around the world without having to actually meet them in person, and read more about it and learn more about it, and watch all these documentaries and watch all these amazing TED Talks. And I think as the conversation was growing, I realized, this is it. I'm going to embrace my skin tone. I'm going to be out there. I'm going to be basking in the sun. I'm going to let my skin glow. You know, I'm going to Bali. You know, I don't care. I'm not staying indoors. And as I just started to embrace my complexion and started to be more confident in it, I felt like I was attracting like a whole like community of girls that were just like, let's do this.
Drawn to your positivity, and they're inspired. we often, all of us girls are always looking for that. We're always looking for the next girl to say, you are beautiful, look at me, walking around, not caring about what anyone thinks. And it really rubs off.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. And that community support is really huge as well, having people around you. So if you're joining in, you're listening to Brimbank Live with Roshani and AD on the RAD Experience on Live FM. We're here with Swarnaa Rajalingam, who is an advocate and inspiration to many who face colorism. Colorism is the discrimination of shades and tones of skin, where ideals of those with lighter complexions are considered more beautiful and valued, and those with darker shades are deemed undesirable. Right now, we're going to delve into Swarnaa's work of tackling colorism. So Swarnaa, you are a content creator, you're an advocate, and you've done a lot of campaign work, through your blog and through YouTube. Can you tell us about your projects and what they're about?
100%. So I like to express myself creatively, and so social media has given me an opportunity to do all these campaigns without having to be like an official organization to do it. And so I've done a few campaigns. So I've done one called Unfair and Royal, and I think that comes down to like especially being a part of all these drama productions and all these like dance productions, like especially when they're trying to cast like the queen or they're trying to cast the goddess. You're never going to catch a darker complexion girl being given that role. And I think that played a huge role for a lot of us. I thought it was just me, and reading all these stories about girls that are like performing like classical dance and going to Tamil school and doing these productions where we're retelling a lot of history. We're not given these roles, and I wanted to reclaim that. And so I'd done a campaign called Unfair and Royal, and it was just like addressing that it doesn't matter what complexion you are royal, you are divine, you're a goddess in your own way. And so that was like my first step into like talking about colorism and sharing my journey and my story. My absolutely favorite one was called the Dark Skinned Goddess Project. So I think I was like sitting at work one day. It was like a Friday afternoon. Everyone's about to have a drink. And I was just like thinking about like colorism and just like why is it still happening? And like, what were some of the other contributing factors to me feeling this way? It was just like one of those Friday afternoons. And I thought about how growing up, I'd be praying to these Hindu goddesses, and like we were taught that they were the epitome of beauty. These three goddesses are the epitome of beauty, and this is what, we have to like try to look like, or we're not considered beautiful. And if you look at the pictures of these Hindu goddesses, they have their symmetrical faces, they've got their long, luscious, straight hair, and they're like, their skin tone is like this pinky white. Like no one within our community even has that complexion, to be really honest with you, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, they're supposed to look like us because like they're our goddesses, but we look nothing like them. And it's like this like really nude, light pink. And so I'm like, okay, you know what? Like I'm not a strong I'm not very extremely religious, but it was just a big part of my growing up and my culture. And so I thought, you know what, I'm going to do some Googling. I'm going to find out like if it's through our like traditional songs or whatever, like are they going to explain why they have this type of complexion? And so I started researching and reading, and like I just could not identify why they looked nothing like us. And then I came across the term Krishna. So Krishna is a god in Hinduism, and Krishna in Sanskrit means dark. But if you ever look at Krishna, he's always depicted as blue. And then we have another goddess called Kali, and she's considered like a darker complexion, and she'll always be portrayed as purple, blue, and green. So I'm like, why don't we have the color brown in our palette?
I want to show it.
Yeah,
exactly. And then I started to do a bit more research, and you know how we have comics, right? Like we've got like Spider-Man and Batman and all of that stuff. So in India, if you look at their comics, they actually use a lot of the Hindu gods and goddesses as the superheroes. And so I started to look into the comics, and I realized that the villains would always be portrayed as the darker complexions, or like blue, green, and purple. And then like the damsel in distress and like the hero would be portrayed in that pinkish white kind of complexion. And I'm like, this is a serious problem, because kids are growing up reading this and they're psychologically taking this in. And what why are we so allergic to using the color brown when that's what we are?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Honestly.
Yeah.
And so I really wanted to address this. I wanted to see if anybody else has talked about this. And, you know, with art, right, like art transcends over time, but context changes art, right? Like you've got the Mona Lisa and then you've got people doing the recreation of the Mona Lisa, but like through different forms. But when you look at Hindu art, like the art of our gods and goddesses, it's been the same over so many years. Like it has not changed over time. And I'm like, why has context and time and history not changed? Why are we still depicting them the same way? They look nothing like us. But if you listen to our songs and traditional songs, like Krishna means dark, but we never ever want to portray him in like a dark brown complexion. Like what's going on here? And so that's what probed me to do the Dark Skinned Goddess project. So it actually had nothing to do with religion, to be honest. I wasn't questioning the religious attributes behind it. It was merely questioning the art and India's hate for using the color brown. And so that was why I did that project. I just wanted to like get people to like critically analyze this and question ourselves and think about like, why are we doing this? And so that's why I organized the shoot. And so I found two other friends. It was really interesting actually. So I approached a girl and I said, hey, would you be keen to do this? And her mum was really afraid of her doing it because it was a bit controversial, because at the end of the day, we're dressing up as goddesses and you know, you don't want that backlash. Like, who do you guys think you are to dress up as goddesses and do this? But then I thought about it. And if you look at any of our Indian classical dances, we're retelling stories from Hinduism, and you've got your light-skinned girls dressing up as goddesses and princesses and queens. So why now is it controversial when a dark-skinned girl wants to do it? And so eventually I found two other girls that were brave enough to do this. And I found some artists. So I connected through social media, the beauty of social media, with an artist in Malaysia who is really amazing at Photoshop. And I just didn't want to mess around with the culture, like especially when you're depicting gods and goddesses. There's so many symbols that are so important, and I didn't want to disrespect that. And there was no way that I'm going to sit there cutting up gold pieces of cardboard to get the tridents and the crown and all of that like perfect. And so I reached out to him, and he does a lot of like photoshopping in terms of Hindu art. Found a photographer, and we did this shoot, and it was so much more easier for me to articulate the messaging when I had powerful imagery to back it up. I didn't want to release it. Eventually, when I got the pictures, I was like, oh my gosh, like I don't know what's going to happen. I'm going to get a lot of backlash. Then I was like, you know what, like this is what we need. We need something controversial to get people to talk about this and put it out there. And I also found a lot of digital artists from Canada, London, Australia, who were willing to recreate the photos, but like with their own interpretation, but like a digitally illustrated version. So that was really cool, because if you look at any of our like calendar art, like the way our gods and goddesses are portrayed, it's all illustrations. Like you'll never see like a real human being dressed like that people would print and pray to at home. So I didn't want that with our photos either. And it blew up. It honestly blew up. And I had a lot of girls message me saying like, this is really emotional for me to see, because I'm looking at these goddesses and I can see myself in this goddess. And I never thought that I could ever relate like that. And people just never even thought about it. So I think it was a really, really powerful shoot and campaign. And a lot of people started sharing more of their stories. And a lot of the artists who were sharing recreations of the artwork were writing about their own experiences from all kinds of perspectives and angles. It was a very, very powerful project. I think another team had recreated what we had done. But I think there was a bit of backlash, because this was a team in Chennai in India who had redone the shoot that we did, but they had used lighter skin models from India and they painted them darker. And so,
what was the point of that?
Well,
and see, this is my problem, because especially in India, especially in South India, you're going to find more girls that look like us, right? Who should be given the opportunity to address this issue and give representation. Absolutely. So why are you still using lighter skinned models and painting them? And that's blackface, right?
Yeah, that's like blackface.
So that like one part of me was like, yes, I'm glad the conversation's happening, and there's another team doing it, and that blew up. after we released it. I think when they released it in India, I think BuzzFeed picked it up and all of that stuff happened, and then it kind of blew up in the wrong way because they painted the models, and that was kind of heartbreaking for me. But look, at the end of the day, I'm just so happy that we ignited a flame, and you know, all this dialogue and conversations were happening through that imagery. So that was another project that I'd done. Another project was Own That Color. So I'm not sure like if you guys have gone through this, but when you're of a darker complexion, you're told that, hey, like, don't wear that color, you're going to look darker, or hey, don't wear that color, you're going to look a bit dull. You know, white, stay away from white, stay away from bright yellow. And it was just so frustrating, like going into stores and being told by vendors and whoever, like, you know, avoid this, avoid that. Or if you're a bridesmaid, you know, I think I'm going to stay away from certain colors when I'm picking colors for you as a bridesmaid. And just like, it's like you're so limited wherever you go. And so I wanted to change that. And to be honest with you, I was actually really inspired by African communities, because I find that African communities really embrace like all kinds of colors and patterns and like all the bright colors. And I find that the South Asian communities are very like limited. Like I purposely wore white because I know how many girls have been told, don't wear white, don't wear white. And so
it looks beautiful though. Like white looks beautiful on your complexion.
I love it. I think we pop in white and it's
we pop in any and every color.
Any and every color, exactly. And so I did this campaign called Own That Color, where I'd worn colors that we'd been told we shouldn't wear, and we did this whole shoot and did this whole write-up about it, and we encouraged girls use colors in your looks, like whether it's your makeup looks, your eyeshadow looks, or your outfit looks that you've been told not to do. And like that did really well. A lot of people joined in, and a lot of people were starting to embrace colors that they'd always wanted to embrace but were told to steer clear of. So that was like another campaign that I'd done. And then the other one, the video, I'm not sure if you guys saw the video of the young girl. That wasn't a campaign. It was just me vlogging in Jaffna, in the northern part of Sri Lanka. She was like a family friend of ours, and we were just chilling in a van. We were going off to the stores, and we were having a conversation, and I'd brought my makeup kit with me to Sri Lanka. I'm not sure why. It's such a humid country. You have like everything else off anyway.
Your makeup will just melt.
Basically. And so the two sisters, they had noticed the makeup kit, and they were like really fascinated by the two young girls. And they're like, oh, like, can you do our makeup for us? So I was like, okay, one of you today and one of you tomorrow. So the youngest sister is of a lighter complexion to her older sister. So I'd done her makeup because she was the baby of the family. So I was like, let me do her makeup. And so we're sitting in the van and we're going. And her older sister, who's actually in the frame of the video, was like, you know, I think when my sister becomes a bride and when she gets married, I think she's going to be really beautiful. And that's when I'd asked her, like, oh, what about yourself? And she was like, oh, no, what the hell? I'm dark. And it was just such a, she just said it with so much like, are you crazy? Like, how can you ask me that question? And I'd been vlogging. I'd just been vlogging the trip. So I just captured that dialogue at the time. And when she said that, I felt like everything stopped. I felt like I was just talking to myself. Like I saw me. I saw me in her. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this was me. This is a teachable moment because I didn't have someone to say this, and this is something I'm passionate about, and I had to tell her. Like if I didn't tell her then and there, I just think it just wouldn't have been the same because she said it with so much like conviction, like, you know. And so I vlogged it, come back, and I thought, you know what, like I think this is just an important part of the blog to share. It's very powerful. I didn't realize the impact, especially because it wasn't an intended, it was just a candid video of us on our trip, and I just captured a part of it and I posted it. Really didn't think much. I'd actually posted it a couple of years ago. And it sparked a bit of dialogue. But just in recent times, I got back into talking a bit more about colorism. Had been seeing some trends on TikTok where, you know, people were changing their complexion for a song, like graphically changing their skin tone to like a darker skin tone and being all like unhappy. And then the transition on TikTok is, oh, like I'm happy, and their skin tone changes to like something lighter. And like that infuriated me, and I just jumped onto the TikTok bandwagon like now when COVID hit, just like most of us. And so when I saw that, I felt compelled to talk about this because there was tutorials on YouTube blowing up on how you can change your skin color through video editing and all these like green screen effects and stuff. And I'm like, this is crazy. And I'm going into the comments and there's no one complaining. Everyone's like, thank you, ma'am. Amazing tutorial, really helpful. And I was just like, I can't believe our generation is doing this. Like, I thought it was the older generation that was the problem. And so that's when I started talking about it. And I thought, I dug up my like archives and found that old blog and thought, hey, let's just post this again, because, you know, we're having this conversation now and everyone's paying attention. And then that's when it like kind of blew up, and Deepika from Live Tinted picked it up, and Mindy Kaling picked it up and posted it on their pages, and then this whole community came together to talk about it.
Yeah, a lot of people from and I know like some huge stars from like Never Have I Ever had also commented on it as well. I mean, I've actually got the caption here that Mindy posted with the video, and I'm going to read it out because I do think it's really important. So she captioned, "I see so much of my younger self in this little girl. It's amazing what we internalize about colorism at such a young age. Luckily, this beautiful little girl has a loving, smart adult to set her straight. For all us women of colour, doesn't it make you want to be that woman to a child? Maybe she's your own daughter. Maybe she's a kid you know. Let's all vow to be the good influences we want to see in the world." And I think that really spoke to a lot of people. And you putting that out there, you know, it was so, you know, it needed to kind of be seen again. And, you know, and the reception was huge, but how have you kind of just felt, you know, with that video kind of coming back up and kind of getting the reception it did? How have you felt with the reception around your projects, and especially people reaching out to you and kind of telling you, you know, this has really spoken to me, this has really helped me, you know, like kind of like see what is happening and what's around me? Like, how's that made you feel?
It's given me a mixture of feelings. So one, I've been very overwhelmed by everything that's happened. So, you know, I got woken up at 4:30 in the morning from friends from North America saying, "You got to wake up because Mindy just posted your video." So that, like, it just, I wasn't ready for it, because I think I've been talking about this topic for a very, very long time. But at the same time, I felt like I've been given some purpose. Like, in a way, I feel like I can change. I've always felt so sad for this happening in the first place, but I've also felt like maybe there was a reason that I was one of the people that had to go through colorism, so I can help speak up for it and connect so many people around it. And I'm just thankful that our community is progressing in a way that at least our generation is coming together, and we're having this dialogue and we're sharing content. We're utilizing social media in a positive light to be able to reach out and let people know that they're not alone in this, whether it's colorism, shadeism, or just any kind of taboo topics. And so I'm just very grateful and thankful that something I put the least amount of effort in, but it was probably the most candid moment I could have captured. Spoke so much to people, and everyone's now coming together and sharing their experiences, and you can kind of tell that people feel so comfortable and so open to share because they know they're not alone. And I think that's the most important thing. I think a lot of people sit at home, you know, in their bubbles, and I think if it wasn't for social media, we would think that we're the only ones going through this, and it puts you in a spiral, and people go through so many like mental health issues, and, you know, certain people are suicidal, and certain people, you know, have family members that are like hounding on them about their complexions, and, you know, when they're about to get married, they're getting criticized, they're kind of like getting thrown around like, oh, you know, you're darker, and there's just so much like bullying and abuse and discrimination that's been happening. But thanks to social media and to people like Mindy, who are not afraid to use their huge, large platforms to talk about topics like this, it's bringing so many of us together, like, and so many different communities, like the South Asian community, the African community, the Filipino community. There's so many communities where colorism is so present, and we're all connecting over it, and we're all like relating over it and saying, hey, you're a sister to me. We're going through this together, and we're going to fight this, and we're going to keep talking about it, and we're going to be, you know, on these huge platforms discussing this and figuring out ways on how we can undo this. So I really appreciated how, you know, Mindy talked about, you know, there must be another little girl in your life, whether it's your niece, whether it's your daughter, whether it's your cousin or whoever. And when you get an opportunity, have these conversations and have these conversations in your households. And I do that. Like, I go to parties and functions and camping trips where, you know, families congregate, and I'm not afraid to have that conversation and talk about colorism. So I just think it shouldn't just be a caption that we post online. There should be a conversation that's taking place when we're in social gatherings. So people that actually do perpetuate this actually think about it. And I love that Mindy posted it, because Mindy's so huge within the film industry, and as you know, like, we don't get represented enough within that industry. You know, it's starting to happen, but sometimes there's a bit of tokenism that's happening. And so to have Mindy post this and have people within Hollywood, you know, who are like casting directors and who are script writers and who are directors who have huge power, are able to be aware that, hey, this is happening and we need to change this narrative. And it's not just people even on that platform. Like, I think each and every one of us in some way or another are in a position where we have the authority to give people opportunities, right?
Absolutely.
And so being aware of things like colorism, it's going to make us think twice, you know, when we are selecting people and giving people opportunities, like, you know, how we're doing that. Are we being more inclusive? Are we, you know, thinking about the diverse community and the minority communities that need representation and opportunities? So absolutely. I'm just thankful that this is all happening now.
Honestly, the internet and social media has really just changed the lives of so many people, and it's gotten us to connect in ways that we couldn't have before, and it's really opened up our knowledge to whatever we want to find out. We can. It's just a click away. What do you think that we need to do as individuals to tackle colorism in our day-to-day lives, whether it's campaigns that we should support or things that we can do personally?
Yeah, I think there's so many different things that we can do. So as you mentioned, definitely, like, if you have the ability to do your own campaign, like, you don't need to be a part of a huge organization. You don't need a lot of funding. I did a lot of the campaigns out of my own pocket. I just reached out to other creatives who actually believed in it, and we came together. You've got friends in your networks, you know, that could be a graphic designer, a photographer, or whatever it may be. And there's so many forms of expressing yourself, whether it's, I don't know, spoken word, poetry, just even writing a simple caption online when you're posting a picture, or organizing a shoot, organizing a video, doing a video on your own iPhone and making it creative and artistic. That's a way where you can get your message out there. Another thing is, I think it's just important to read, first of all. So, like, make the time to actually go and read up on colorism and how it started and where it exists and how you can contribute to, like, unpacking it and helping people unlearn. Watching documentaries, there's a lot of TED Talks around it, and engaging in these conversations, especially when we're in social gatherings. And I understand, like, right now, like, COVID's happening and a lot of us are not out and about, but we are on video calls, we are on Zoom chats, and we are on house party. And it's, you know, you're not going to always be like, hey, how's your day going? Like, have some of these conversations in your WhatsApp chats. If you've got a group of friends, bring the conversation up and say, hey, what's everyone's thoughts on this? Like, what do you think? Where do you stand in this? And, like, have that dialogue. It's not about who's right and who's wrong. It's just about having that conversation, whatever opportunity you get. And for me, like, I find that a lot of people are just afraid because they just don't want to, like, step on people's toes. So they'd rather just keep silent about it in person. But, like, especially when you're in gatherings and you see it happening right in front of your eyes, or you're at a school and someone's being casted and you have the opportunity to have a chat to somebody and say, hey, like, why are we, like, you know, shoving this person aside? And is it because of their complexion? Like, have those conversations and read up on it. Do whatever campaigns you can do. If you don't have the means to contribute to the campaign actively, just share the campaign, like, share the video with your friends and family. I think that makes a huge difference. We just need the message to travel globally and for everybody to be aware. Because what I found interesting was that even when Mindy shared the video, I went through the comments and there was a lot of people, especially from other ethnic groups, who were like, oh, we didn't even know this existed. And even when I brought it up with my colleagues at work, who are more of, like, a, you know, Caucasian white background, etc., they were just like, wait a second, what's colorism? And I had to, like, explain it to them, and they're like, hold up, discrimination within your own community? And they were so baffled, like, they'd never heard of the concept. They're like, we thought you guys were dealing with just racism and discrimination as a community group by others, but, like, y'all are doing it within your group. And so, like, even, like, don't be afraid to bring it up with your colleagues and have a chat with them if they're, you know, open to the conversation. It's just, don't be afraid to talk about it. There's so many of us doing it, and I know it's very uncomfortable, but it's so important. So important. You don't know who's out there listening and whose mind you're changing.
That's it.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. And starting that conversation and dialogue is super, super important, as you said. What advice do you have for, girls and boys, especially young girls and boys out there who are struggling with the standards that are perpetuated, not just in the Western world of beauty, but also in their ethnic and cultural groups?
Okay, so this is what I would say if I could speak to myself as a young child and to everyone listening. We have to understand that society and communities have created a definition of what beauty standards are. At one point, the hourglass figure wasn't even embraced, right? It was your slim figures, small feet, your small petite woman. And then trends change and suddenly the hourglass figure's in, right? And it just keeps on changing. It just keeps on changing because communities and societies decide what's actually considered beautiful. If you look at trends and you look at your movies from the 60s, 80s, you can see fashion changes. So I think just understand the idea that there should be no standard for beauty, right? Everyone is beautiful in their own way. We're all unique in our own ways, whether you've got a disability, whether you're of a darker complexion, lighter complexion, whether you've got alopecia, like we're all different in so many ways, and that's what makes us beautiful. Just don't fall into that trap of thinking that you have to look a certain way and you have to act a certain way to be considered beautiful. There's just something really wrong within the community for like media perpetuating that idea. But as long as you understand that as a person, when you're looking into the mirror, that, hey, like I'm still beautiful, I'm still amazing, and I'm still like valid. Regardless of what's being perpetuated out there through media, like you'll be more confident in yourself. And I think that's the most important thing. It's such a huge message, and it's going to take us a lot of time. I think like now we're at a point where, we are trying to be more inclusive and embracing diverse communities, but we have a long way to go. But it all starts with ourselves. First, embrace yourself before you can embrace other people's differences, right? If you're insecure about yourself and you believe that, hey, I'm unattractive because of X, Y, and Z, then that's the same message you're going to put out into the community for other people to feel the same way. So if we, in our own homes, looking into the mirror, start believing that, I'm incredible, I'm amazing, regardless of how I look and, how I present myself, that will be like a wildfire for the community and society as a whole.
Yeah, absolutely right. And that takes me back to a saying from RuPaul's Drag Race, actually. He always says, if you don't love yourself, how the hell are you going to love somebody else? And I think that's,
that resonates.
The world's life mantra.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now for some fast round questions.
Yes, I'm ready.
This colorism topic. What would be your last meal on Earth?
This is such a tough one. I like all kinds of food. My last meal on Earth would be koth-roti. So koth-roti is like a... How good is koth-roti?
It's so underrated.
Explain it.
It's so underrated. You have to try it. You gotta take her to get some koth-roti.
Yes, please.
It's like it's made of, okay, I might be wrong because like I'm a foodie, but I don't cook. But I think, is it made of like flour? Like, and it's like...
Yeah, like flour and butter, and there are different recipes, but it's kind of like roti chopped up. And
so think of like a pizza, like, the base of a pizza, and it's all chopped up, and then they put like all these spices and herbs, and so you can put chicken, you can put lamb, you can put like, I don't know, like fish, or you can just put vegetables, and you can have like egg koth-roti, chicken koth-roti, lamb koth-roti, and it's just like magic in the mouth when you eat it. And you can never get bored because there's always some different flavor going on in there.
You sold me on it.
Yeah. We'll go get koth-roti. It's good.
Yes, please.
Who is your biggest inspiration?
My biggest inspiration has to be my brother. My brother's name is Advan. He is 20 years old. He was born with cerebral palsy, so he can't walk or talk. He walks with assistance, and just the way he takes on life and how grateful he is. Like, he can't verbally communicate at all, tell us if he's in pain or what he wants, and he'll just smile at the littlest things, and he's just so thankful and grateful for his life, and he's just my biggest inspiration.
I love that. What is your life mantra?
My life mantra is be good and do good. Just spread good energy. Yes, shit happens. Life is full of obstacles, roller coasters, challenges, and sometimes things just don't go your way. But you just keep spreading that good energy, because I'm a really, really big believer that what you put out there is what you get back.
Absolutely, yeah. And last question, because our show is called the RAD Experience. What is your most raddest experience?
Oh my goodness, my raddest experience? I've had way too many and I don't know what to name. Okay, you know what? Like last year I took the plunge and I moved away from Australia for a year and I lived in Canada and I did a lot of traveling. I hosted female empowerment events in Canada, Malaysia, Australia. So I just traveled and I got to meet all these people that I'd been following on social media, meeting in person, connecting, and just like that, building that like meaningful relationships with all these incredible people that I like saw through a screen. I think that was just such a cool experience. Like 1 year of travel, especially before COVID hit. It was just amazing. I loved it.
Wow.
Amazing. Yeah. Swarnaa, you have been such an incredible guest and you've given us so much understanding into your insights, experiences, and your amazing projects. Tell us a little bit about where we can find you on social media. Give us the name of your blog and YouTube, and also you've got a manuscript that you're working on as well. Tell us a little bit about that.
Absolutely. So I'll start off with the manuscript. So I'm working on a written publication right now around colorism, and I want to create a book where we are able to share all our stories around it. It doesn't matter what community you're from or from what angle you've actually experienced shadism or colorism. You know, I want to be able to give people a platform to share their stories in written form. So I am putting together a manuscript at the moment. So if anybody would like to reach out, you guys can definitely send me an email at thelifeofasocialbutterfly@gmail.com. If you guys want to see more of the projects and just like follow the journey, you guys can follow me on Instagram at The Life of a Social Butterfly. My Facebook is like kind of gathering a bit of dust, but there is a Facebook page that exists. And I'm also on TikTok, so TLOAS Butterfly, because my username was too long. But yeah, that's where you guys can find me.
That's so amazing.
Thank you so much for being on our show today. We appreciate it so much, and hopefully we can speak to you and hear about some other great projects that you're delving into. But thank you so much for your time, Swarnaa.
Thank you guys for doing this. I really appreciate you guys covering this topic on your platform and sparking this dialogue. I think you guys are doing a phenomenal job, and just to see two women of color like killing it makes me really, really happy. So thank you for the opportunity. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
That was Swarnaa Rajalingam speaking about colorism. You can find her on her social media platforms. Do reach out and look at all her amazing projects. You're listening to the RAD Experience with Roshani AD on Brimbank Live.